Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank all of you for your service to our country. Secretary Creedon, I want you to know everyone in Indiana is very proud of you and what you've accomplished. And Mr. Carson, it is nice to see another Blue Dog alum here, and we wish you the very best. And Dr. LaPlante, you're not from Indiana, but we're still proud of you. So, Mr. Carson, Congressman Carson, the first question I want to ask is about suicide prevention. And it is something that we all have worked very hard on. I certainly have had a big focus on this. It is part of the defense bill that we move forward, that we have a study that's coming out in February as to how to best aid our men and women who serve in the armed forces. And one of the areas that we had worked on in our office was to try to, as part of the mental health assessment, or as part of the physical health assessments that's made of each soldier each year, that a mental health assessment be made, and that we talk to the commander of each individual who is there and who sees them every day, who can tell if there's changes, and then also to do some screening. And we're supposed to get that report back in February from the Office of the Secretary of Defense as to how this will work moving forward. And so we would like to work with you, with the Army, obviously with all of the branches, but as someone with the Army, to try to help us in this process. Because, as you know, we've lost more young men and women to suicide than in combat last year. And I want to know, you know, the Army's, I shouldn't say willingness, but I'm sure you're willing, but we'd love to have you as a great partner in this effort to try to end this scourge.
I can assure you, you will have our very much utmost partnership in this effort.
Additionally, Mr. Carson, you mentioned before 46% of the Army budget now is personnel. In your mind, is there a red line that we get to that, we can't cross that line in terms of that percentage that's dedicated to personnel as opposed to equipment or other areas?
That number is historically rather stable, in fact, that while the Army budget has fluctuated over time, that 45 to 50% that's being spent on military personnel, not including our civilian personnel, is more or less stable in the Army budget. And so I think that's a good number. We are a people-centric service. We spend much more than the other services do on our soldiers, and that number is probably going to be one we try to maintain.
Do you see it remaining in that neighborhood, that percentage, as we move forward? Because I know there's concern, for instance, with the Navy, where it was 1/3. It's about half now. And unless some changes come through in the future, you're heading up towards 2/3. And so do you see it in the Army as being a stable number?
Well, I think we will budget to try to make it a stable number, and that means we have to make cuts in the number of people, let's say, or in other areas to try to make this all balanced, because the Army has a view of kind of what a balanced Army budget looks like, the amount we spend on procurement or research development. But we are greatly concerned, and the Chief of Staff has spoken quite eloquently about this, about the inexorable rise of compensation costs, whether it's health care benefits, whether it is just pay raises, benefits, these kind of things. And so I know Congress is very interested in this question. We are as well, because as the most people-centric service, to keep that number stable, we do have to get a handle on that increasing slope of compensation.
And one thing, and Secretary Creedon, don't take offense at this, but I want to invite Mr. Carson and Dr. LaPlante to Crane Naval Warfare Center. You're invited as well, but these two for very specific reasons. Dr. LaPlante, we do a lot of work on counterfeit and counterfeit detection there in terms of parts and supplies and equipment. And so naturally, in a position that we are hoping you are ascending to, what do you see as your role in preventing the introduction of counterfeit parts into the Air Force process?
I would tie counterfeit parts, unfortunately, as part of the broader cyber resiliency issue. So what we typically talk about is we talk about the supply chain, and that is understanding for our weapon systems where we're getting the parts, and that in fact these parts are truly what we think they are. So I would view the counterfeit part issue in terms of the job I'm nominated for to be part of building the resiliency into that system. I think There are, for selected military programs, we have gone to trusted foundries, as you may know. In my view, there's a limit to how much you can do with trusted foundries only because there's a certain throughput. But I think we're going to have to start to build resiliency into starting with our most critical systems end to end, and that's going to include looking at the supply chain and the parts.
Yeah, I was wondering if you are a proponent, as I am, of more aggressive forensic measures because, as you said, we certainly hope they're from trusted suppliers or whatever, but a constant, I guess, spot check or determination on a lot of what we come through because of the critical nature of making sure these parts are reliable and perform as advertised.
Absolutely. I believe it's also something we talked earlier about science and technology. I think this is an area that we should be investing in science and technology, non-invasive ways of doing surveillance testing on large populations of chips, for example, to detect anomalies and things that are in their Trojan horses, whatever. I think that is an active, important area of research that we should be doing.
Secretary Creedon, you have done so much work in the nuclear area and in keeping our nation safe. And just recently, you know, we went through some challenges with North Korea. And as we look forward, looking at the government that they have there, the actions that have been taken there, and I'm not asking you to be an expert on all things North Korean, but what do you think are the key steps in making sure that we're able to continue to move forward, continue to counter that threat? And what do you think are the things that they respond to more than anything?
Senator, from my current position, one of the things that we've been very instrumental in is ensuring that the United States is well protected from whatever the North Koreans end up doing with respect to the development of their long-range missiles, as well as their short-range missiles, which are a threat to the theater and to our forces over there. And so we've been very instrumental in March with respect to the Secretary's announcement to expand the capacity and the capability of the ground-based strategic deterrent, to add 14 additional ballistic missile defense interceptors at Fort Greely in Alaska. The challenge now is to continue to improve those interceptors so that they become safe and efficient from a non-proliferation, counter-proliferation, proliferation perspective with respect to North Korea. It's absolutely essential that we do everything possible to prevent them from achieving their goals in their program, from getting the materials, the technologies, whatever it is that they need to advance their program. We have to work to be able to prevent them from getting those things. And also with respect to making sure that our allies in the region also feel that our extended assurance and deterrence is secure and viable. And I think we did that too, not too long ago when we had the B-52 flyover of the Korean Peninsula. So I think all of these things need to continue to press forward so that we maintain a good posture with respect to North Korea.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.